Hello, welcome to AQS Inmate Call, and I'm your host, Joel Wilborn. And today's episode is an actual inmate call from an actual inmate who is Greg Brown. And he has a message that he wants to relay directly to the outside world about conditions that go on inside of the prison. So when we're all sitting around the dinner table talking about how we need to fund new prisons, new jails, incarcerate more people. Just remember, there's folks that's sitting in there. And what we want to come out of these lockups is a better person. Why go through all the trouble and all the expense of locking a person in prison for 10, 15 years only to have the person get out and commit the same crimes or even new crimes? We want them to go in and pay their price because they did commit a crime, and you'll find very little argument of people that say that you commit a crime, you should not be locked up, and you should not be rehabilitated, you should not be punished. There should be some type of retribution for this, and so these folks get locked up. They should be treated. It doesn't necessarily have to mean like a plush environment, but they should be treated with all their legal um, benefits. And when a jury goes and says we want to convict this person and lock them up for 20 years, it's going to cost the public. It's expensive. It is very expensive to keep a person locked up. And we have to make sure that it's worth it. And if a person is thrown in the prison and then mistreated, some violent crimes are committed against them. Maybe they're assaulted or murdered, or maybe even denied medication or certain nourishment. Some people need a special diet, glucose free or gluten free, or maybe they're lactose intolerant, or maybe they're diabetic and they just need a special diet. If they're not allowed to get this, that causes more problems than it solves. And then eventually, a lot of these folks are going to be getting out. And do you want them to get out and just have this anger towards society? When you look at news reports or you read stories, you're not going to see too many ex convicts committing crimes. So we can put a hold on this, stop this, change it to something else if we do it the right way. And so the problem isn't crime, the problem is the motivator, something to motivate them. And let's find out what that is before we release them. So here's Greg Brown with a message to the public.
DOC officials have been knowing for almost 100 years now that abusing prisoners' property causes prisoners to rob and burglarize people in people's homes more than they did before they ever went to prison. As far back as the year 1928, the United States Supreme Court Justice Brandeis, he wrote, and I quote, "If the government becomes a lawbreaker, it breeds contempt for law. It invites every man to become a law unto himself. It invites anarchy." Ironically, the Department of Corrections slogan is, quote, "working together for safer society," unquote. What a fraud. They're doing this stuff because people out there don't know about it and are not getting on them about it. If you get on them about it, then their plot unravels. Let me give you an example. They often say prisoners should not be allowed to have any item or property because the property is altered. The prisoners are not allowed to ever see the property again when it was after it's taken from them. And because of that, you're not allowed to show that the property was not altered at all. Either the guard lied or the guard made a mistake. But the prisoner has no chance of even showing this because they destroyed the evidence. They say they do this because prisoners, sometimes trade property when they're not supposed to. And the altered property can conceal the identity of the true owner. Because it's altered, then they don't know if it was traded or not. And so they don't really know who the real owner is. Well, inexplicably, all of the guards, all of them, and all of the officials, they all pretend not to know that Washington Administrative Code 137-36-040 in parentheses 1 in parentheses B requires them to preserve for 6 months any prisoner's property which they think or pretend they don't know who the owner is. So they immediately destroy the property so the prisoner can't show the guard lying, not saying it was altered, even though the prisoner would have been able to prove the guard lied if they had simply preserved the property for 6 months as required by the WAC rule. You can see how their lies, thefts, and their harassments unravel when you just pay attention and get on them about it. Each and every day, prison guards and officials confiscate and destroy much prisoner's property by saying it was altered and the owner could not be identified. None of them, absolutely none of them, ever preserved the confiscated property for 6 months. I would love to find out and have DOC admit to me that in the last 5 years they've never preserved property for 6 months. I can't speak about other states on this issue, but in Washington State, where the law allows prisoners to have property, widespread loss and abuse of prisoners' property has become an epidemic. And the most common fear that is shared amongst Washington State prisoners is that our property will be abused. That's our greatest fear. The fact that DOC policy still allows them to keep doing this pretty much says it all. They're doing it on purpose. These people are supposed to be penal experts. But when caught with their hands in the cookie jar, so to speak, they pretend to be buffoons who didn't realize what they were doing. In July of 2020, prison guards Slaughter and Romero walked into my cell and took 3 boxes of my legal property. When I asked them why they were taking it, they said they were acting under orders. Even though I filed grievance number 20707828, neither the grievance coordinator, Heidi Griffin, nor the prison superintendent, Donna Holbrook, nor the assistant deputy secretary, Kohler, ever once denied the taking of my legal property, nor did they ever once explain why I was taking it. And no one ever was disciplined for taking my legal property because DOC policy 420.375 does not prohibit any prison guard from taking any item of prisoner personal property when the guard decides to not write an infraction and prefers to keep the matter between himself and the prisoner. That's just disgusting. So here I have given several examples of property abuses because this issue affects each and every prisoner, and because the Ombudsman office has investigated and already concluded this is a systemic problem. But as many of you might imagine, this is just one of thousands of problems involving official abuse. One example of a deadly abuse is where the medical staff put heart attack victims into wheelchairs, which, from what I understand, is a death sentence for anyone suffering from a heart attack. I once had a cellmate who used to be an emergency medical technician. One day in the prison day room, a prisoner was on the floor on his hands and knees having a heart attack. My EMT cellmate was trying to get him to lay down on his back and spread his hands out away from his chest, because this is the way you respond to somebody having a heart attack. But the guard on duty made him stop. And then the medical staff arrived with a wheelchair. My EMT cellmate tried to tell him to put in a wheelchair, for a heart attack, victims in a wheelchair. But they refused to listen. And the staff made my cellmate shut up and stay out of it. My cellmate said the prisoner was going to die because of the wheelchair. We later found out the prisoner died in the wheelchair. Myself and other prisoners filed grievances about this because we're afraid of what happens if we have a heart attack. But all of our grievances will return unprocessed upon saying we cannot grieve the issue until it happens to us. In other words, we have to die in order to file a grievance about it. Another example of official abuse is shown where officials kill each other by bringing prisoners to the prison and putting them into a cell with another incompatible prisoner, and then saying they must live together for at least 30, 60, or 90 days or fight it out. About 3 weeks ago, approximately October 15, 2023, a 50-year-old man was brutally beaten by a young ex-Marine prisoner because they were forced to live together, and all of their requests to move out of Williams Unit A, Cell 111, were denied. The 50-year-old prisoner literally died and had to be resuscitated. The DOC, Department of Corrections, benefits from this violence because assaultive prisoners may be charged and convicted for assault and given more time to serve in prison, which again helps to ensure job security for the guards. As long as prisoners keep beating each other, the guards are guaranteed a job, and DOC officials are able to ask the state legislature for more money to deal with this chaos that they have created on a daily basis. The number of ways that prison guards abuse prisoners are too many for me to describe. I will now talk about how to stop this madness. Number one, I would create what I call a grievance bank. Because one of the major purposes of the grievance bank is to provide maximum exposure. If outside people only knew the things that prison DOC officials are doing and saying to prisoners, then they would automatically stop. They'd be ashamed. They wouldn't even want nobody to know how they talk to us and how they respond to our complaints. So that would immediately change just knowing everybody in the world knows what they're saying to us in here. I have filed grievances and gotten response that is so ridiculous to a point to where I know they would not have responded in such a ridiculous manner that other people could just see the way they was talking to me. For example, prison mailroom staff withheld a letter to me from Miss Anna Ibarra with her phone number weeks until the prison sergeant was able to place a block on her phone number for no apparent reason other than to harass me. I filed grievance number 0210211 about it. But the grievance coordinator told their most convenient lie by simply denying that the phone number was blocked. No matter how many times I called this blocked number, no officials can't deny it was blocked. They even said they had an unidentified staff member call the phone number, check, and determine that Anna Ybarra's phone number was working fine. That was a big fat lie. I did persuaded the corrections officer to call Anna's blocked phone number for me and to write a statement saying her number's blocked. He did that. And by doing that, Officer Kirk was forced the grievance officials to admit they had blocked Anna's phone number. So what did they do next? Well, they switched up to the next most convenient line. They claimed the phone block was done by accident. Remember I said a minute ago, when they get busted, they pretend they don't know. They pretend to be stupid buffoons. That Anna was trying to tell me that she had suffered from a stroke. She knew I could help her. By keeping me from contacting her, Sergeant Fredrickson and his minions caused her more stress and caused her to have a second stroke from which she died. Fredrickson and his minions killed Anna. Yeah, here's how you can tell their response is clearly a lie. Because had they blocked Anna's phone number by accident, then they would have said so when I first reported the phone block. By saying they had some anonymous staff member check and determined that the phone was working fine, and then by getting busted later, this proved they intentionally lied about it. And they never predicted that I would have a staff member witness it. And by the way, they retaliated against that staff member so bad, he ended up quitting. He had to quit his job. In February of 2003, I told a prisoner, Richard Spruill, that if anyone would send me a letter, any letter, even a registered letter with a return receipt requested, I would not receive it. Wanting to see if that would happen, he asked his wife, Anna Spruill, another Anna, to send a requested letter with return receipt to me on February the 7th, 2003. She did, and as I predicted, mailroom supervisor Fredrickson refused to deliver the letter to me. In response to my oral complaints, on the next day, on February 8th, the grievance coordinator phoned Fredrickson in the mailroom and asked him about it. Fredrickson responded by saying no such letter had arrived for me. Meanwhile, as I was talking to this grievance coordinator, Richard Spruill's wife was on the phone talking to a U.S. Postal Service employees about it. As a result, a U.S. Postal Authority phoned the prison and talked to Fredrickson, and before the day was over, Fredrickson hurried up and forwarded Ms. Spruill's letter to me. And I received it just a couple of hours after Fredrickson had said there was no such letter. And in response to my grievance number 03-04037, Fredrickson claimed that, well, he just misplaced the letter and forgot about it. Once again, pretending to be a stupid buffoon. In another instance, a prisoner named George Bassel complained that prison officials were harassing him by blocking his phone calls to his fiancée. This hillbilly guard was telling him to get off the phone just because the guard didn't like Bassel's long hair and tattoos. When Bassel refused, because there was nobody else who needed the phone was empty. But Bassel said, man, nobody's using the phone. I'm going to keep using the phone. Get out of here. So when he refused, his fiance's phone number was suddenly and mysteriously blocked. In response to administrative grievances, the grievance coordinator gave the most limited lie by denying that the prison's phone was blocking his calls, and even claimed that the prison doesn't even have equipment capable of blocking president's phone calls. Vassal's fiance complained to Washington State Representative Dave Maskin, who got involved because Representative Maskin was vice chairman of the Corrections Committee, which had provided to the prison equipment capable of blocking citizens' phone numbers. The prison's internal investigations officer, Sergeant Reno, and the grievance coordinator, Harold Cooper, both got fired for lying in response to Vassal's grievance, and they unblocked Vassal's fiance's phone call. Countless grievance responses can be exposed for being completely inconsistent, and grievance officials make up the most convenient lies they can think of in order to deny a grievance. For example, I submitted a grievance against Corrections Officer Grubb for making me miss an appointment. On that same day, Grubb had made several other prisoners miss their appointments as well. At the same time as me, I wasn't the only one who missed my appointment at that very instance, and Grubb made other people miss their appointments as well. My grievance was written well enough to where the grievance coordinator, who, by the way, is a prison staff member or former prison staff member, could not justify Grubb's actions. So the coordinator simply conveniently denied that the incident ever happened. On the following day, I was talking with other prisoners in the unit day room, and I found out that another prisoner had filed a grievance on the same issue and received a different response than I received. In this other prisoner's grievance, the grievance coordinator actually admitted that Grubb had made numerous prisoners miss our appointments on that day. That response then gave some flimsy,
You have 1 minute left.
For Grubb's causing us to miss our appointments. So I fueled my response by saying Grubb's conduct was admitted in the other prisoner's grievance.